How do we replicate this feeling of being very creative with other people? How can I get 1 million people together to create something? I truly believe that this is a movement.
Hey, it's Alexia Adana. This is Creative Vibes, a podcast series where we're exploring everything on the intersection of AI and art. We're talking to artists about their creative process, their approach to storytelling, hot takes, trends, and everything in between. So let's dive in with today's exciting guest. Creative Vibes is brought to you by Made with Lenovo Yoga and advanced by AMD Ryzen AI. With advanced processors built for AI performance, AMD gives artists the reliable power to create, edit, and render at the highest level. Today, we are talking to Minh Do, co-founder of Machine Cinema, a global community for AI filmmakers. And Minh and his community ask a big question: if anyone can make a film, then what happens to storytelling next? So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We are in Austin. It is South by Southwest, and so glad that the timing and everything worked out so we could sit down and have a chat. I would love for you to tell our audience what Machine Cinema is and how you started it.
Yeah, it's many things. We kind of think of it as an ecosystem. Sometimes we talk of it like it's a digital city, but and the way that we operate is kind of like a professional association where we do events, we do education, we do, podcasts, information. So we try to provide new creatives entering AI or, traditional creatives or AI native creators, tools and events and networking and jobs and all these things that they need to kind of survive or thrive in this new world, which we're all kind of figuring out, right? I think for me, I can only look maybe 6 months ahead of barely even. Maybe I have to look 6 months behind nowadays. It's moving so fast. But I think as a result, we have this community of people. And I think early on, we started doing these little events, just like 4 or 5 people with friends like Suki and Hawk and Ian, Mike, Joya, all these people. We would just tinker. And we realized that, oh my gosh, when we play with each other, with me and Fred kind of realized, which my co-founder Fred, we realized, oh my gosh, when we play with each other, we're learning more faster because people are off. One person is off in VFX land, another person's in 3D. Somebody's just a mid-journey maverick. And so we all kind of learn from doing with each other. And that kind of formed the ethos for what became Machine Cinema. And,
yeah, that's great. And so what's the timeline? When did you start tinkering? And what was the timeline from tinkering with friends to tinkering with people in the community to creating Machine Cinema?
Yeah, I guess late 2022. Is that when ChatGPT came out? I can never remember now.
Yeah, 2022.
And it was DALL-E, Midjourney, ChatGPT. And I think that's when we were just starting to tinker. And then we were just doing events in LA, just small little, in our backyard, living rooms. And then it just kind of snowballed into, oh, wow, how can we think of this more like a production? How can we think of these events, what we call Gen Jams, how we could do Gen Jams more productionized, and how could we, and there's all these moving parts, getting credits for everybody, trying to figure out what are we going to do together in the room, and how can we challenge people? Because when we first started in LA, everybody was new, and people like Verena and Jie, all of our friends from back then, we were just playing around, and as we started to kind of do it more, people were okay, we know how to do a music video with AI. Let's try to challenge ourselves. And so that kind of evolved. What is a Gen Jam has evolved over time, becoming almost more like a ladder of events. Okay, we can do some simple stuff. We can now do, literally last week in San Francisco, we did an event where, hey, let's make a video game and a video game trailer. And we'll watch the trailer and we'll make the video game all in one night and we'll have fun with that. So we're trying to diversify and lean into where are the tools going in especially the last year. We've been way more experimental and more ambitious about what you can do in 4 hours, 2 hours, or even a full day. And now we have an accelerator program we call Page One, where we're doing 6 to 8 weeks with a cohort of creators. How can we really push how far we can do AI content stuff? Of course, across that long period of time. So,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And you've referred to this moment of time that we're living in as a creative renaissance. Tell me about your perspective, personally, how you're viewing AI in this time, and what do you kind of bring into the community philosophically, that's really driving how you're expanding, like bringing the tools to other people?
Yeah, I guess like for us, like our ethos is about, curiosity. We're tool agnostic. We're trying to play with all the different tools. We believe in community as like this kind of, we believe fundamentally that AI can be like a connective tissue. That it's not just that, there's a lot of focus on, oh, what can a solo group of people do or what can traditional people do with AI to make things faster. But I think, but after that, or even right now, like how can I get more and more people to get involved in a creative project together? How can I get more creative with what we have right now? And it's interesting because sometimes I play with tools like Luma agents, and I'm like, I try to do less. Even with Midjourney early days, I just try to do less with the tool and just see what happens and then get inspired. And so like that modality of doing less and then doing a lot more. Like I throw in a whole script that I wrote and see what happens. And like that dynamic and that in-between space of like doing less or doing a lot more or being very, very prescriptive or leaning into the AI as a creative partner. I think that is kind of where I'm like more like just curious where things are going to be. I don't know for sure, but I do feel that we have on one side this connective tissue collaborative element. On the other side we have this like spectrum of how much I could rely on AI as a creative partner. And then after that, what does this look like? How can I get 1 million people together to create something? How can I get, hundreds of millions of people? Because I feel like AI enables that. And I think we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
But I think that's inevitable. I think that's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I mean when I say creative renaissance in some ways. Like that's one element of that is like, whoa, like where are we dreaming beyond the current mediums? Right now it's very skeuomorphic. It's very like, how do we use AI to do old stuff? So then after we get used to that, what comes after that? So, yeah.
Yeah. And if you imagine, a few years from now, like what do you want to create that you can't create today, that you can start to imagine AI aiding you in doing that?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I mean, I love science fiction. That's why I'm here, honestly. It's because I've been a writer, sci-fi writer for a long time, just trying to figure it out. And I think AI was the reason why I leaned heavy back into technology because I moved to LA to get away from technology, and then AI kind of like pulled me back in. And I do feel like there is, can I create science fiction worlds? Like, can I get people, like my dream is, can I create worlds that other people write within? And okay, but now how do I adapt this thinking to this new world where, hey, can I create worlds or can I get storylines or a story spine for people to play around in and enable that to happen and then come back? Like I always love like that Andy Weir, the writer of The Martian, he like published the chapters and had a community of people like edit the chapters or give him feedback and then he rewrote them. Like, or like I think about, I don't know, the $1 Million Homepage is my favorite reference point. I don't know if you know.
I don't know.
The $1 Million Homepage was the founder of the Calm app, which is the meditation app. He created this $1 Million Homepage where he created every pixel was $1. And it was just like in the late 90s. And he was like, every pixel's $1, anybody can buy. And people started buying like $500 worth of pixels to put their brand name there. Eventually he made $1 million. It's still there. And funded his own education, his university education. And that's so provocative to me as an example of, hey, I can create this platform for people to play within. And like, what does that look like now when I can do something like that? I can create a platform, I can create a story or a world, and I can have agents and humans playing together in this world. So I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's very nebulous and abstract, but that is very inspiring to me and like where things could go. You know?
I love hearing about the backstory of people who have more traditional backgrounds who were interested in getting into AI because there's a lot of, artists and creatives who feel afraid of the technology and who have a lot of negative things to say. And I think a lot of those negative things are, warranted in a lot of instances, right? Like job loss and, the loss of humanity in the arts and the crafts. But I've talked to so many artists and creatives who come from a traditional background and who are embracing the technology like yourself. So I think it could be also interesting to hear like your background as a writer, as a filmmaker, as a creator, and a little bit more of like why AI stood out to you as a technology that you actually like just felt naturally drawn to.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, my background is a little eclectic. Like my career started as a teacher, then I was a journalist, then I got into venture capital, so I got into tech, and then I became an entrepreneur. Then I was a writer, and then I moved to LA because I wanted to be a producer, a writer of science fiction. I don't know what I was trying to figure out because LA is a weird place. And then and then kind of got into like music videos and that, rode the wave of a little bit of Web3 and that universe, um, and supporting musicians, like kind of almost like a producer type role. I co-founded a company, but but when I when we were looking right before AI arrived, I was like, okay, I'm in LA. What am I doing? Like, I gotta get back into writing. And I think the unlock for me with AI was, oh my gosh, like I can realize the vision immediately. And I think I always think about this joke where it's like everything's funny until it's about you, And there's an irony to me about AI where there are musicians who like AI because it can help them make music videos, or there's maybe writers who like AI because it can help them visualize a thing. So I think that it's like AI is like helpful on the other end of things that you can't do very well. And for me, I did feel that when I'm not visually inclined at all. I'm very bad at drawing and I'm very bad at picturing things. But playing around with Midjourney in the early days, and even Dolly, because I love pixel art, was like, hey, I can finally make something that is passable, that is close to what I had in my brain, And then it's more than that. And then I'm like off to the races playing around with, whole another worlds of ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think at a certain point, I just stopped creating, honestly, because I just was so excited to share that process with all these people. That's really, part of why machine cinema became such a focus for Fred and I. It was just like, we're having so much fun making stuff. This feeling, I just have to share this with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's addicting.
Yeah.
So for those of who are watching and listening who don't know what Gen Jam is, tell us a little bit more about it. Who came up with the name? Because it's a great name. Yeah. And like, if you join a Gen Jam, like, what can you expect?
Yeah, I mean, the early days of Gen Jams, it was just playing around. Like Fred and I at first, we were just playing around with, can we be like the Siskel and Ebert of AI short films? And we were just tinkering on the side, and then we were watching as this new crop of creators came, and that's when then we started playing in person and we played around. And the core concept of Gen Jams is learn, create, play, right? Where like you learn a new tool or a set of tools. In the beginning days, we would just bring our own tools and we were just learning. And then we create something. So like, is it a short film or a music video commercial? Nowadays, it's like a video game and a commercial. Or we're doing one where, hey, we're gonna make 360 video, and we're gonna have a dome, and we're gonna show it in a kind of a planetarium type scenario. And so like Gen Jams, and then it's play. So it's like, hey, let's check out. We'll watch the videos, or we'll play around with the dome, or we'll play the video games. So that arc usually is like, I don't know, 4 to 5 hours. I mean, a lot of people do versions of this where like they're creating and they're playing. And for us, it's just like, how do we do that in a way that's very seamless for the audience and feels like, hey, we're also like, maybe we're voting or we have judges coming through. How does it feel just to go through this very quickly, and get that spark of energy? One of my favorite Gen Jams we did with Eliza McNitt. She's the filmmaker with Primordial Soup and Darren Aronofsky. She did this amazing short film. And we did one with her where she was the director and writer. And we had 40, 50 people in a room. And we said, groups of 4. Now Eliza's going to direct everybody. She has this vision for a short film. They each did 20 seconds. And then she edited it all together and we watched together. And that felt like being on set. And I think that's really the goal with Gen Jams is how do we replicate this feeling of being very creative with other people all at once and also learn at the same time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It feels like an experimental lab for storytelling.
Yeah.
And I think I don't even remember, like everyone I talked to from the community, I don't even remember which meetup we met at or how we were connected, but it feels really nice showing up to these meetups because you start to like see the same people over and over again.
Yeah.
And so, I joined a like community call with Machine Cinema a few months ago, and you guys do that like weekly, right?
Yeah, Gen Talks. We do that weekly. We have like a guest or two who come in, share about what they're working on, or maybe someone has something very philosophical to talk about. Someone just wants to talk about what jobs are getting lost, or we bring in a lawyer to talk about copyright and things like that. So we try to give a variety from founders of startups to creators to observers to lawyers to business people who have some insight for us on things that we're thinking about, because it's so active in the group chat, and really that's what Gen Talks came out of, is that the group chats were way too active and people were getting either it's just too much of a fire hose. And so we're like, well, how do we kind of like find the people that are really interesting, who have really interesting things to say to our community, and bring that to them so that we're always kind of like up to date and bringing the topics that matter to those up to date things, because it's so fast, right? Every day it's another thing. So
what have you found like from the community is the most valuable thing that you're kind of offering people?
Ooh, that's a good question. I guess the funny thing is, maybe it's in the question itself. It's just, maybe it's community. Maybe the community is the thing that I think I find people value most, at least when we get people giving us feedback. They give us the most feedback. Hey, like, I finally have a sense of belonging in our community, in a world that is, I think, intimidating for two reasons. One is that there's a very large anti-AI ideology there, of like folks who, which to your point earlier, are valid reasons or have warranted reasons for being in that camp, which is scary if you are a traditional creator or just a creator in general and you're posting your stuff online. I know a lot of people who are traditional, who were posting their AI stuff online, and they got so much hate for it, they just stopped posting, right? So that's one side. And the other side is, it's intimidating because things are moving so fast, right? Like today I got to learn the next Midjourney thing, or Luma, or, or Google VO or whatever, right? And so like keeping up is intimidating. And so I do think that there is something like where, hey, I can ask anybody for a question, they have their own take, and that is interpretive. And I also have a sense that, hey, this is, to me, honestly, what I truly believe, that this is a movement. Like last year, I traveled to 30 countries. We did Gen Jams in 150 times, which is crazy for us. And I'm dog tired from that. But like, it was so fun to meet people from like Lagos, Nigeria, all the way to Warsaw, Poland, to Tokyo, to Mexico City. And they all are coming into this, and they're so excited because they can finally tell their stories, or they can finally play around and feel creative in a new way. And to me, that is very special. And that, back to the creative renaissance, is like, who are the people that are shaping that culture, who are fundamentally, I think, are curious. Fundamentally might be a little bit on the spectrum because they're crazy enough to sit around and tinker with this new tool for hours and hours, or like, or they are just, isolated and wanted a dream and finally can do it. And so that all of these qualities of the culture that we've been honored to be a part of, are there in Machine Cinema as a community, and it becomes a home for people to play around.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think it's also great that you get to build these chapters across the world and empower people to lead chapters. So as I understand it, you go and you travel and you do these Gen Jams, but people can lead like a Machine Cinema chapter in their city, right?
Yeah.
And like, what is that process like?
It's just like, ideally they've been to a Gen Jam. Sometimes we've had people who haven't, and they're just like, we want to do something. I'm like, all right, I'll coach you through how can we do a Gen Jam. And really it's like cultivating their own local hub, doing, potentially just doing like, we call them Gen and Juices, where just like a dinner or a cocktail networking thing. Or we do these things called walk-in jams, which are maybe my favorite these days, where, go to a museum, take pictures and animate the art, or go to a garden, and walk around and take pictures and animate. That's super fun. So like just doing that alone is like, how can we encourage people to do that and be involved in doing that more often and building their local community, and also we're like, hey, some people don't want that. There's other stuff that's happening, and so we try to adapt around what that means. And we as Machine Cinema, co-founders, we are just like, okay, how do we adapt around what you guys need? What do we provide? We try to work with partners to bring them credits. We try to build, even little tools like icebreakers to help them do their events and things like that. So yeah, it's very open. But yeah, at a minimum, we try to get, hey, do a Gen Jam.
Yeah.
Get people to understand that feeling.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there like artists or filmmakers that you've like really loved that you were able to bring into the community and collaborate with? Or are there any like dream artists and filmmakers that you'd love to come to a Gen Jam?
I would love to come?
Yeah.
Ooh, I mean, everybody, Taylor Swift, Olivia Rodrigo, whatever, all the greats, even bring the Beatles in, revive them. I mean, we also have, Willonius Hatcher has done one with us. And Willonius, I mentioned to you before, like Willonius and I we've been friends for a long time. We met in the Clubhouse days. Yeah. And we collaborated a bunch on like radio dramas, which is funny to go from audio to, to this crazy AI video universe and music universe. But yeah, I mean, like even Verena and I don't know, everybody that we've wanted to collaborate with, we've gotten to. And then maybe there's in a dream world we're working with every celebrity we can think of.
Yeah. If you could collaborate with one celebrity for a music video, who would it be? And
we could collaborate with one celebrity.
Like if you had like a Gen Jam.
Yeah.
Because I love the format of like the director.
Yeah.
Working with the audience.
Yeah.
And each part of the audience they kind of co-create this thing in this live setting. Like if you were to do that with like, a musician or a filmmaker, an artist, like, well, who is the first person you would love to be directing that with Machine Cinema? Maybe we can make it happen.
I mean, Daft Punk.
Bring him back for a Gen Jam.
Bring him back for come on now, with the robot helmets.
Yeah, that would be sick.
I mean, I love EDM. It's definitely a big musical like universe for me, and which I'm still learning about. Mm-hmm. So is it like, I don't know, maybe it's someone from that EDM universe. It's like Chainsmokers, Nimino, I don't know, Fred again, I don't know, so it's one of the bigger names, and cool. That would be kind of cool because I do think that electronic music is, and hip hop probably. We did a project with Busta Rhymes previously, which was awesome, but like, can we do something with the electronic world, which is very forward thinking, very remix, very DJ, and I do think that I do wonder often, like, are we heading to a world where we have AI DJs, and what does that mean? I have no idea, right? But DJs remix stuff and play it live for people who have fun. So what does that mean in an AI visual world where you can also potentially do real-time AI anything, right?
Mm-hmm. The tech is there.
Yeah, so maybe someone in electronic. Daft Punk, definitely.
I am all about Daft Punk. I would love to see them come back for that.
Yeah.
Do you think AI will decentralize filmmaking?
Do I think it will decentralize filmmaking? That I don't know, honestly. I think that the powers of distribution and I think, because I was a blogger back in the day, and I think when the blogosphere was coming up, a lot of people thought the New York Times or like the big brands were not going to make it. But because it became so noisy, they became even more relevant as like a standard, right? And so I wonder if a similar thing will come true. It'll be very noisy. And so Disney, Fox, Paramount, etc., will have that kind of like, they not only do they have distribution, but they also have the IP that will be more resonant. So I don't know if that is coming true, but at the same time that, hey, I cannot shake the feeling that, hey, I met this Nigerian filmmaker who has an amazing, futuristic fashion, thing, right? Malik Efegbua, who has this amazing, like, he basically did like a fashion show using AI, where it's called the Elder series. I don't know if you've heard of that, right? And the Elder series is amazing because he just did like, he featured like elder Africans wearing futuristic clothing. And that became now it's a real fashion show with real human beings. And I'm like, that's so provocative. And I can't shake the feeling that someone like Malik or like the creators I met in Tokyo, et cetera, that they deserve to have films that are of the quality and fame of like, say, a Schindler's List or a Godfather. Like, I feel like every culture and even person, and maybe I hear a lot of people say like not everybody has a story to tell. I just don't think that's true. Like, everybody maybe not people under 18, maybe if they're too young, but but if you've been old enough, someone in your life has gotten sick or died or like, and that's in itself a story of loss and if told with the right lens can be a great story. And I think everybody kind of deserves that. The cultures themselves deserve it, right? Like, we had an Italian wave cinema, right? And therefore got a lot of Italian stories because they were there at the right time. And obviously Italians are amazing artists and et cetera. But like, how is it not possible that someone from there's not stories like that from Vietnam, and that they could have quality stories like that from there, or wherever. So I think that is just going to happen to me. Like, the quality of storytelling is going to go up, or the quality of the output is going to go up, and we're going to get more stories from those places, right?
That's an interesting comparison about the Italian, cinema wave. Do you think there's a certain type of person where AI filmmaking stories are going to emerge from? Like, you kind of have the most direct access to, an AI filmmaking community and the type of people that are showing up wanting to create. Like, Machine Cinema is one of the largest filmmaking communities next to like Curious Refuge. So in what you're seeing, do you find a pattern in the type of people that are showing up and what that narrative is like where this wave of new storytelling with AI is going to come from? Or is it just kind of like, is there any pattern? Is there any similarities, clusters, insights you can gain from who this new wave of storytelling is going to come from?
I think the pattern has been more in the types of people, but not the stories. At least from, like, I think it's the type of people who are curious, the type of people who want to tell a story, the type of people who are leaning into weirdness, even creativity. I mean, maybe we've seen some bright spots in science fiction, but maybe science fiction will get outmoded as the world becomes more science fiction, and so that as a genre won't be as powerful. And maybe we'll lean into fantasy. I don't know. So I don't know if there's been a pattern. I mean, I think that animation is going to be a bigger and bigger thing because it's going to be easier and easier to animate. And I think that we are going to see more genres and subgenres. But yeah, I think we're still very early. It's kind of a weird thing because in some ways we are faster than I thought we would be 3 years ago or 4 years ago in terms of the technology. I just didn't expect that, what we're seeing at the very, very top level was where we would be in terms of the output of a given text to video. But from a creative place, we're not where I expected we'd be. I think most of the people that I met 3 years ago were like, we're getting into this to tell our stories, but maybe the financing isn't there yet. And maybe the economics of this moment isn't there yet. And it's weird to say, but in the Web3 era, with NFTs, even though it was a lot of fraud and craziness, even though it was like fraud, it was just insanity, I felt like there was more creative then, just because a bunch of people got bags of money and just spent it on frivolous things. And that was very weird.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen that much weirdness quite yet. And so it's maybe too early to see the patterns. Maybe we have to go through another cycle of the tools getting a little bit better, getting a little bit faster, and more money going to these creators because they have to establish themselves long enough, right?
Yeah.
The amount of people that I think that are really good is not that much larger than I would say like 2 years ago or even a year ago. right? And what is going on there? And I think that's because the financing isn't there.
So we have a question from the community that we want to see if you can answer. You wrote recently about Pixar co-founder Ed Catmull. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And how he worked to make artists and technologists equals inside Pixar. But today with AI, the people building the models and the people creating with them are often miles apart. And this sparked a really great question in the comments from Sina Babe. And she asked, how are creators navigating this new artist AI dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that is very fresh in my mind, so I don't know whether I have a strong answer. What Ed Catmull said really got me down a train of thought, which was that he was saying that the CGI open source community of that era, on one side was like they were building the bricks of CGI in an open source community one by one. And so like, you wanted like an ant to have a dimple, so you had to code some software to make that. And so and not only that paired with what he was building at Pixar, which was this culture where where artists and technologists were kind of equals in his universe, when he was finding that before that, that within the walls of different companies that he was interacting with, that either the technologists were the second-class citizens or the artists were. And so he always tried to cultivate this culture within Pixar that they were closer together. And, if you were an artist, you could walk across the street and talk to the person that's, coding software, or you were that person, you were both. And it got me thinking about what is the current economic dynamics of AI, which is why I'm sympathetic to the anti-AI ideology to some extent, which is that we have a very polarized political environment. We have a very intense power structure around, the hyperscalers, who are the only ones who can afford billions of dollars to train these models. And also, it's different from a CGI point of view. I'm creating something brick by brick. In the AI scenario, I'm waiting for these models to be trained. I'm grabbing a bunch of data. And I know it's a lot more technical. It's very refined. And the researchers are doing a lot to kind of tune it and directionalize it. But they're still putting it through this thing. And they're waiting. Boom, 3 months later, I have this model. I don't know what it's capable of. I know to some extent from previous models. But I'm now having to figure out as an artist, what can I do with it? And the researchers have to talk to artists and figure out this emergent thing that's happening. And so in that sense, I do feel like AI model training is very abstracted away from this like walk across the office scenario that was articulated about Pixar. So as a result, I think in some ways we are kind of downstream of the model training. We're all downstream. The products, the aggregators, the artists, we're all downstream of what could be, even though we're actively requesting things to be a certain way. And so that's been unique for us, I think, as artists, that, when Midjourney came out, it was like, I can never make this thing do this. And so we had to adapt around creating that. And I think that's been the trend. And that's where I think the best AI creators have come out of, where they have just tinkered so much with workarounds that they just have an intuition about how AI thinks and what AI can output. And that has been really interesting to watch. But that dynamic of that abstraction dynamic, I think, is still there and hard to conceptualize and hard to think about where that's going. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned it earlier, the wave of these new creators are people who are curious. And I also find who think in systems and who look at AI as just another system to adapt to.
Yeah.
And push it in ways that are based on a goal. I want to create this thing, so I'm going to figure out a system to do that with this tool. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a different type of creativity, I think.
It's
a different type of, like one of the best creators I know, he's Mike over JK, and he just like, he's proudly autistic, and he will spend, 16, 20 hours straight just playing around with the tools. And he has, to your point, has a system. He's just like, I'm going to test the same shot across all of them, and I'm going to try that shot in a different way. I'm trying that shot in 100 different ways, and then I'm going to do less or more. And then he has a feel for which one is better, and he can squeeze more out of, and he might be wrong half the time, but he's getting to squeeze a certain model to do a certain thing that maybe someone else couldn't have because they just haven't thought about it in that way.
Yeah.
Right? They're not pushing it hard enough.
The last thing I wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
So in the community, when we think about slop and, quality, right? You mentioned quality. Are you guys in your Gen Jam, like, how do you kind of talk about taste and craft? Because filmmaking is an industry that is ruled by extremely high levels of craft. And do you talk about that when you are doing Gen Jams, or is it more so focused on like teaching people the skills?
No, it has turned out to be both. And it's interesting because, in my opinion, the best Gen Jams that we've done were in LA or in New York with particular set of agency folks, or in Paris, interestingly enough, because I think the Paris ecosystem is very strong. And then bright spots here and there with Warsaw, Tokyo, here and there. But fundamentally, we end up having to teach both storytelling and a film, AI filmmaking. I think there's kind of like this dynamic where people are having to learn, in LA, talking about what is an inciting incident or a beat or, a 3-act structure, a 4-act structure, like that is well understood and easy to talk about. Even it's in the water, right? And it's not in the water in San Francisco, right? It's not in the water in I don't know, in other cities in the world. I don't want to dunk on any cities other than San Francisco, but but I think that is a big part of it. I think taste and craft have been kind of almost like a meme in the last few months, especially even in tech and in the LLM universe. Like, oh, taste is a thing, but we do talk about that, and we talk about, the community talks about how we can have certain tastes. I don't know that there are ways that we're talking about to get better taste. I don't think we have developed systems for that in the community. I think that already exists, let's say, in Hollywood, where you just have to watch a lot of films and interact with the right people, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I wonder sometimes if taste is defensible, as a thing. I wonder sometimes if, right now when I play with some agents, my relationship with it is that I am sometimes just letting the agent give me creative ideas. And maybe there is a taste element of me editing and curating what I like, but it is giving me better things than it was, a year ago or 2 years ago. And so is its taste getting better because it's interacting with humans, et cetera? So I do wonder, like, how defensible is taste over time? And maybe the just as AI is going to challenge different types of jobs and where we view the epicenter of creativity and where we view the value of the human being, is that going to shift to something else? Is it just going to be like personal stories? Like, it doesn't matter that I have like that I'm like colorblind like Christopher Nolan and therefore make a certain type of film, and with the sound, the Hans Zimmer type banging sound, etc. Or does it matter more that I just have a very real, personal, raw story? And is that taste, or is that something else? Or does it actually take taste for me to identify that my story is, which of my stories like is meaningful or not? Like, I don't know, but I think that's still something. To answer your question, I guess I think it's still something we're all still trying to figure out. What's valuable.
Well, thank you so much for joining out of your busy South by schedule. And I know you ran here from a panel, so really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I will see you in the Machine Cinema group chat.
Yeah, see you there.
Thank you so much.